Hello and welcome to A Gypsy's Kiss, the vlog. I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Stick with us for a couple of seconds and I'll tell you where to find the Rocky Mountains.
I didn't know they were missing.
Well, they're not missing exactly.
Okay, so where to find the Rocky Mountains? Tell us about that.
So this goes back to when I first started the search in 2012. And I had made the videos at Collected Works and Moby Dickens. But before that, I had read the book. And in the book, Forrest Fenn said, I knew exactly where to hide the treasure chest, so it would be difficult to find, but not impossible. It's in the mountains somewhere north of Santa Fe. That's what I had before Collected Works and Moby Dickens. Mm-hmm. So if I were to say to you, Shelley, I hid your son in the mountains somewhere north of that. All right. If I were to say to you, Shelley, I hid your dog.
Oh.
All right. Shelley, I hid your purse. It's an inanimate object. Uh-huh. So I hid your purse someplace in the mountains north of Santa Fe. Would you drive to Wyoming to look for it?
No, I'd beat up on you until you give me my purse back. Weirdo.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, the point is that when somebody tells you it's in the mountains north of Santa Fe, you don't envision, and we've said this before, you don't envision that the purse or the treasure is in Colorado, Wyoming, or Montana. And so I didn't. Apparently, I'm not an original enough thinker. Now, I know there were people at that time, between 2010, 2012, that were searching the areas other than in New Mexico. They were searching New Mexico, but they were searching Yellowstone and other areas in Montana that were referenced in The Thrill of the Chase. Apparently, I didn't have that kind of vision. Right, so I was stuck here in New Mexico.
Well, you live in New Mexico, so why not check it out?
Exactly. And I didn't want to have to drive 900 miles or whatever it is to go find it. Then, at Moby Dickens bookshop in November 2013, this happens. Let's play this clip.
Well, there's a major clue in the book, but I don't think it will help you find a treasure chest. I'll tell you what the clue is. In the back of my book, there's a map. And I've said that the treasure chest is hidden in the Rocky Mountains. Here's a treasure chest of the Rocky Mountains. So this, if you knew where the treasure chest is hidden, you could find it on this map. But the map stops at Canada. The Rockies keep going up there, but I said that it's in the Rocky Mountains, which would include Canada. When this book was printed, I didn't realize that that benchmark maps that made this map stopped at the Canadian border. So that's a clue, but I don't think it's not going to help you much.
Okay, Rocky Mountains.
Rocky Mountains more than once. Mm-hmm. I was recording at the time. I was paying attention to what my camera was doing and what the audio was doing and what a good videographer should be doing. And my jaw dropped when he said Rocky Mountains. And the reason it dropped was because I just didn't expect it. In addition to that, I hadn't picked up the copy of the new book, Too Far to Walk. So I didn't know there was a map in the back of Too Far to Walk. So again, this might just be my lack of foresight, but I wasn't aware that A, there was a map, and B, he was now referring to the search area as the Rocky Mountains. Well, that changes the algorithm significantly, because now there's a map that expands my search area from this little colita right here through all of that. That's what? Look at that little... That's 10 times the search area. Right? Mm-hmm. Again, perhaps I didn't have the necessary vision or foresight because there were already people searching up in this area here. And I imagine some searching already in this area here as they took hints from The Thrill of the Chase and used that as the impetus to go search in these areas. But now we had it in, I was going to say black and white, but in, RGB color. Mm-hmm. Here's the other thing that I thought was interesting, aside from the fact that I had never heard the Rocky Mountains mentioned by Forrest Fenn prior to Moby Dickens, and that is Forrest, he pulled out the map and he showed it to everybody in the audience. It's in the back of the book. And he says something like, and I'm paraphrasing here, if you know where the treasure is located, you'll be able to find it on this map, indicating, that somehow or the other, you could point to a place on the map and say, hey, I know the treasure is there, which of course is a guess, because if you knew where the treasure was, you wouldn't need that map to go find it. Forrest, to the best of my recollection, has never said that the map is in that the treasure is in one of these 4 states. He now says that it's in the Rocky Mountains and allows us to assume that it's in one of these 4 states. I've never actually heard him say that. And so, as a matter of fact, if somebody has a quote or a reference point where Forrest has actually said, you will find the treasure in one of New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, and Montana, please send it to me and I'll eat my Frito pie.
Oh. So he definitely does tell you it's in the Rocky Mountains because it's written on the map.
Right. Well, that's the other thing that's interesting about even the reference on the map says Forrest Fenn's hidden treasure is somewhere to be found within the highlighted region of the Rocky Mountains on this map. Again, no reference to the states. Forrest Fenn didn't hide a treasure in New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, or Montana. He hid it in the Rocky Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
of course, he doesn't have to say that because it's written there.
Exactly. And that never came up before 2013, even through the Good Morning America interviews.
Today's Show.
I'm sorry. Why do I keep referring to Good Morning America?
It's on in the morning. But the Today Show, the very first one, he interviewed with them back in February, late February of 2013. They didn't even discuss the Rocky Mountains in that interview. They didn't talk about it being anywhere that wasn't in New Mexico. She was in New Mexico to interview Forrest, and they talked about somewhere north of Santa Fe, like it's not that far north of Santa Fe.
Exactly. Yeah, you had no sense that they had an expectation that it was further north than the mountains north of Santa Fe. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even sure that the whole 8.5 miles north of
that hadn't come up yet.
Hadn't come up yet. So you're into 2013. It wasn't until the plan for the publishing of Too Far to Walk that Rocky Mountains becomes viable, that the map is included. And the first question you have to ask is, why is the map in Too Far to Walk? Why wasn't the map included in The Thrill of the Chase unless the map was an afterthought? Mm-hmm. So the obvious question at that point is, why? Why did Fenn decide to expand the search area from the mountains north of Santa Fe to the Rocky Mountains, which, oh, by the way, he conveniently demarcated at the Canadian border, I guess for fear of not adding penguins to the mix?
Well, he did say that was benchmark maps that did that. He didn't take credit for that.
Well,
but anyway, why did he do that?
Answer to 2 questions. Why is the map in Too Far to Walk and not The Thrill of the Chase?
It's not in The Thrill of the Chase because he was not including anything specific other than north of Santa Fe.
Right.
And the book was only sold in Santa Fe in a small bookshop. So he didn't anticipate people from around the world having access to this book. So there was no reason to have a map in there other than, just to state. And he did have the small map that wasn't really highlighted or featured that was on the poem page was just New Mexico, as you pointed out.
Exactly.
Why he extended it? Well, part of it, I think, is that he was getting national attention from the Today Show. People wanted more information. They were printing up more books, having more sales, generating a lot more interest. And he likes that attention. He decided the reason he wanted to do this in the first place was to get people out into the woods and the forests and the mountains to get some exercise and take their kids with them and have some family bonding time. So why not include all of these extra states so that more people will get in on the act? And the other thing is, he knew from looking at the forums and talking to people that they were looking in other places besides New Mexico. They were looking in the Yellowstone area. They were looking in Lander and other Wyoming areas. They were looking a lot of other places. So he has said before, I'm not going to tell you when you're making a mistake, so why not go ahead and expand to include those search areas that where people were already searching anyway.
And not necessarily, as usual, not lying about it, right? It is not a lie to say it's in the Rocky Mountains. And if you know where the treasure is, you'll be able to see it on this map. Those are not lies. And I'm not even sure they're misdirections. They're just memoranda of convenience that says, well, let me just expand my search area from that to all of this. I mean, honestly, from my perspective as a New Mexican, New Mexico is almost an afterthought in all of this, right? Mm-hmm. If I was a first time, like, let me find out where this treasure is and I'll get his books and I'll look at the map, I wouldn't even look at that little tail right there. Mm-hmm. I'd be up here in the big areas like that.
Well, speaking of which, didn't he say that there were a couple of people had been within 200 feet of the treasure or had figured out the first two clues? They were starting to get close.
You know what? That quote goes back to the earliest one I could find is 2011, and he's maintained that stance since. So it's not something like like it was as recently as even 2013, 14. That quote goes back. He used it early on and has pretty much used exactly the same quote ever since. Some couple of searchers have been within 200 feet of the treasure, but they didn't know it. They went right past it. That's an old quote, and I guess that could have referred to searchers looking in New Mexico, which is where most people would have been looking at that time, is my guess. So that led me to the question about, well, exactly where are the Rocky Mountains? So I did what everybody else did, and I Googled the Rocky Mountains. As you can see, the Rocky Mountains are actually pretty much the western half of the United States, or the western third of the United States, leading from the Great Plains all the way to the eastern border of California. So that makes it pretty hard. We know that they're in these four states, but as you can see, in New Mexico, the Rocky Mountains actually extend all the way into Mexico. The range in Colorado is pretty wide, although this is the darkest. The same here in Wyoming. The problem is the Bighorn Mountains, which are included in most definitions. The advantage is the Bighorn Mountains are generally not high enough. They're under that 5,000 feet lower limit. And then up into Montana, and they pretty much follow the continental divide. So what I did is, after we had that conversation about the map in the book last week, and I pulled up that 1895 map of New Mexico, and oh, by the way, I've been corrected. This isn't the exact map. There is another very similar map where there are some minor changes, but the Rocky Mountains are in exactly the same place and labeled the same way. I wanted to thank our viewer for letting me know that. So this is my little segment in New Mexico that would have made me really happy if that was all I have to search. But then Fenn in 2013 and Moby Dickens, where I nearly swallowed my chewing gum, tells me, nope, that's not enough. You're going to have to go into
Colorado?
Yeah, Colorado. So now my search area is extended from that little stretch of land in New Mexico all the way through Colorado, and that's just the western face. There's an eastern face that's included there along the Laramie Range. From there, it goes into Wyoming, starting with the Laramie Range, goes through the Continental Divide, through the Wind River Range, all up into this southwestern corner of Yellowstone National Park. But in some definitions of the Rocky Mountains, they also include the Bighorn Mountain Range over on this side. Mm-hmm. What's interesting about this particular map is that although in New Mexico, Colorado, and Montana, the Rocky Mountains are labeled as such, In the Wyoming version, it's not labeled. And I think the person that, the people that this was the U.S. Geological Survey of 1894, 1895, recognized this basin that was established by the Western Interior Sea and saw that there was a very obvious break between the two. This is effectively high desert. There are hills as we drove through when we went to Lander, but not mountains. But it goes, as I said, through the Wind River Range, up through Yellowstone, and into Montana. And in Montana, there's another big linkage, from north to south and off into Canada. So what was frustrating for me was that search area in New Mexico had been increased by, an order of magnitude, and in addition increased the travel. If I had been Fenn, if I was Fenn, and I had made the conscious decision to expand the search area from New Mexico all the way up through the Rocky Mountains, through the various 4 states, I think the reason I would have done it is that would have expanded the search for the people in those states, not limited only to the people in New Mexico, but make it available to the people in Colorado, the people in Wyoming, the people on Montana. I'm not sure if he envisioned there would be a situation where Kevin and Shelley and Toby get in the car and drive 900 miles to spend a week in Lander, Wyoming, to see if they could find it. I don't know if he did that, because the distance that he created for us just by saying that it's on someplace on this map, that's a big chunk of territory to cover. And of course, let's say you and I go out next week, we find the treasure in New Mexico. Not that anybody is ever going to know that, because that's not our plan, but but there's going to be a lot of frustrated people who have spent a lot of time and money looking in several states where there is no treasure. So, not that it's in New Mexico, not that I know it's in New Mexico, but I could easily come to that conclusion.
There's a higher probability the treasure's someplace in the mountains north of Santa Fe. Well, we know that. It's in the book.
All right. Well, let me put it another way. I believe there's a very high probability that the treasure in the mountains north of Santa Fe is in New Mexico. It just doesn't make sense otherwise. I like the Rocky Mountains. I have spent a lot of time in the Rocky Mountains, especially in New Mexico and Colorado. I've visited the Rocky Mountains in Wyoming, and there is much to be said for them. But I'm going to drop our trip to Montana. We are not going to Montana.
All right.
I have better solutions and a higher probability of it being in New Mexico. I have better solutions for, and I believe have a higher probability of that treasure being in New Mexico.
Okay. And it's closer, so that's good.
Yeah, we don't have to drive far. It's a
Yeah.
weekend trip instead of a week-long trip.
That's right. Lots of less driving, more searching. So next week, you tell us. Tell us what?
So next week, Kevin, Shelley, and I are headed up to Nebraska for the great 2017 eclipse. And our preparation, we're going to have a very short time frame to prep for the show. So right after we make this video, we're going to make a second video. And in that video, we're going to ask you to ask us questions about the Fenn treasure. And we will do our best to answer them. Shelley will have more details for you in that video. But if you just enter comments, not this video, and the one that Shelley makes in just a few minutes that you'll see along with this video, if you'll enter questions about the search that you'd like answers to, we'll be happy to give you our opinions on the matter.
And we'd like to take this opportunity to ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're not a subscriber, if you don't subscribe to anything, you may not know this, but YouTube will send you in a little update to let you know whenever we put out a video. So that's a great little benefit of subscribing. And if you want to ask us a question,
Nice.
we like to talk to our subscribers. So take a moment and subscribe to our YouTube channel now.
Good idea. So anybody that wants to ask a question in the short video that's to follow, if you want your question answered, you have to be a subscriber. How's that?
All right. Is that it for today?
I think that's it. I've done enough damage for one show.
Okay, and thank you so much for watching. For A Gypsy's Kiss, the vlog, I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Thanks for watching. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye-bye.